Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. It is time for my second round with seasonal color analysis makeup tutorials. This started for me in my channel back in the beginning of 2022, and we started off with a deep dark winter makeup tutorial. This time I'm going to be doing a more natural daytime appropriate look for the deep dark winter color palette. Without further hesitation, let's get right into this makeup tutorial. So to get started with the deep dark winter makeup, I'm going to start by priming my eye. MAC paint pot in the shade Painterly. Using my finger, I'm going to use this to prep my eyes. I have pulled a few colors from one of my favorite brands, Sydney Grace, and I'm using one of my little palettes, and I've taken some shades from my Sydney Grace palettes that I've put together to create some great everyday quads. Here I put a highlight. You could also put a blush, but there was a new blush I saw this morning at the drugstore that I thought would be perfect for this look. The first shade I'm going to start with is this pinky shade called Fairy Tale. Fairy Tale is a neutral leaning warm pink. Deep dark winter is inherently a cool tone season. However, our neighboring season is going to be deep dark autumn. So you have an influence of neutral warm from the autumn palette. Sometimes they can get confused with autumns since they are more neutral and they can really wear warm tones or cool tones, and it won't look too off since they are an in-between palette. I like to add just a little bit of warmth to the base of the eye look. That way it keeps things from looking too cool, which can sometimes pull a little bruisey on some people. Is the shimmer shade from Sydney Grace called Troops. I'm going to be using an Hourglass number 3 brush. Tilt my chin up, look down, stretch the eyelid, and I like to start blending from the lash line right up to meet that pinky shade that we applied. Then I like to go back to that first brush we used to apply the shade Fairy Tale and use this just to blend those two shades together. With this being a slightly more subtle look for deep dark winter, we want to make sure we are keeping our blending in mind because deep dark winter is a winter palette, which means it has higher levels of contrast. So a lot of times we'll have to use shades that are quite opposite of each other. So we're using something lighter in our socket line and a little bit darker on the lid. And to stop those two shades from having a harsh line in between, we want to take our time to blend. We want them to still be separate, but we want them to have a soft gradation between each other. Definitely leave your eye makeup here, throw on mascara, and you're done with it for the day. But there's a lot of people out there who like eyeliner. For our deep or dark winter eyeliner, you can really have fun going with either a brown, a dark gray, or a black. I'm going to be using a black liquid. This is from Maybelline, and this is the Hyper Easy Eyeliner in black. I'm not worried about precision because we are going to go back in with a small brush and I'm going to pick up darkest shade in my palette called Beyond, and pointing my brush down, I'm going to wiggle right over that eyeliner. So now we see from my left side to my right side. This side definitely has a little bit more depth. You can see we're getting a little bit more smoky. And for most of our deep dark winters, this is gonna look totally natural. I'm a light summer. We are in a completely different realm from the colors and the styles that suit me. So this is gonna look a lot more dramatic on me compared to what I would normally wear. For someone with a true deep or dark winter coloring, this is gonna look very, very subtle. Pick up your shimmery shade, which was Troops, and we can layer the color right on top. Okay, now that I have both sides matched up, I want to add a little bit more contrast to the eyes and really play up some dimension. I'm going to highlight around the brow area and I'm going to use the shade called Drift. I'm going to take a small fluffy brush. This is called the Fluffy Eye Blender brush from e.l.f. For this one, we are going to go right above that pink shade and go right under the arch of our eyebrow. Back and forth, back and forth. And then I like to blend in little circular motions pulling up into the brow and away. That way we're making sure we're still keeping that pinky hue hue showing through. For the moment, we're gonna leave our eyes here and we're gonna move on to complexion. When choosing your foundation or concealer shades, most of the time you are gonna fall into either a neutral or cool undertone. Depending on the brand, depending on how it's formulated, you might wear a neutral undertone, but in general, if you don't know where to start with either the neutrals or the cool undertones. I'm gonna be using L'Oreal True Match in the shade C1 or Cool Light. Now, there's no seasonally appropriate way to apply your foundation, so I just like to work off the back of my hand and start towards the center of my face where I want more coverage. You can use a brush or a sponge. I'm going to use the e.l.f. Precision Airbrush Blender, and I'm going to blend out. When thinking about different finishes and textures, what I like to do is find a nice skin-like finish. Since deep dark winter is between deep dark autumn and true or cool winter, you can play a little bit with different textures. Muted seasons like the autumns tend to be a little bit more matte or satin finish as far as overall finishes and your complexion as well as your eyes and your lips. Winter can get a little bit more creative. They can have more matte, satins, shimmers, glitters, whatever they want all thrown into one, but I like to play it just right. So choose one or two textures to complete the overall look to create the most visual harmony. So my eyes have a little bit of shimmer, but for the most part, everything else is matte. So where they meet in the middle, we're going to create more of a satiny appearance. The skin is a natural matte or satin finish. So right here, we're already striking a balance between the overall complexion finish as well as the eyes. We're going to add a little bit of shimmer to the face or glow. I'm going to be using the Auric Glow Lust in the shade Morganite. Now this is a liquid highlight. This is going to add light to the complexion, and I'm going to apply this to the tops of my cheekbones. Also bring a little bit to the center point of my nose, doing this before I apply any type of concealer. So this is going to be a little bit more in the background. It's going to give the skin a glow, but it's not going to take over. It's not going to be our primary focus. The concealer I'm going to be using is the Makeup Revolution Eye Bright Illuminating Under Eye Concealer in the shade Porcelain. Now for under eye concealer, there is, again, no right or wrong way to apply your concealer, much like with your foundation. What I want to do is my skin and my overall complexion is lacking that contrast that a deep dark winter would have. I'm going to use a concealer that is a little bit brighter than my skin tone to add in a little bit of that contrast to make things feel a little bit more believable. Some people dislike the seasonal palette that they fall into naturally. They don't like their natural hair color. They don't like their natural eye color. So maybe they'll add in a new hair color, colored contacts, change their style, and then their skin tone and makeup style they put on. For some reason, it still doesn't work. So what you can do is figure out key features of what the season is. So deep dark winter is a winter season, neutral to cool in its undertone, slightly more contrast in its finishes, as well as the level between colors. I'm adding a little bit of contrast between the highs of my face, which is what we're doing with the concealer, and then we have a mid-tone, and we're going to add some lows in. That way we have all three levels with contrast. You could add a contour if you want to. I'm going to play with blusher. Stila Convertible color in the shade Rose. And for this, I just like to put it on the back of my hand, and I like to pick it up because we are still needing to powder, and we're going to use a powder blush. So I'm going to use this cream blush as a base. Now, something I like to do to keep it feeling very natural and more realistic for my skin tone is I add a little bit of my color through the perimeter of my face. Great tip when you're doing this with your own makeup at home. Next time you blush, if you can remember, try to get a picture and use that picture to find out where your skin turns red or pink, and use makeup to replicate that. It sounds silly, but if you focus your color where you want it and then apply the residual on the other areas, or maybe you don't want as much color, like most people, we flush on the temples, but you don't primarily apply your blush on the temple. So apply it to the cheek and then apply the residual through here on the bridge of the nose and the chin. You will just feel a lot more harmonious. And for me, getting the rest of the makeup on, even though the eye is still strong for me and my coloring, it's looking less intense. And once we get the lip and the rest of our cheek color on, it's gonna look very, very realistic. And if my hair was darker and more like a deep dark winter, it would look impeccable. And something fascinating with a lot of our deep, dark winter celebrities is if you look at their makeup for their daytime events, to the movies and stuff they're in, to their red carpet makeup, there's generally not a huge difference between them. Look at people like Jenna Ortega, Gal Gadot, Tiana Parrish, and they might play with a bright lip sometimes, they might play with a slightly stronger eye, but in general, the individual facets of their makeup tend to be very similar, with one thing changed here and there. And their eyes, for the most part, if you look at how they do their eye makeup, it's always slightly smoky. Maybe for the evening, the liner's a little bit stronger. Maybe they have a slightly heavier lash on or a little bit more volume, or the lips a little bit brighter. But what looks natural and realistic and pretty on them tends to look a lot more dramatic on other people, especially people like me who fall into that lighter spectrum where we thrive in pastels. Now I'm gonna use a little bit of my Milani Shine Proof powder and an e.l.f. complexion brush just to set down my base. So I want to make sure any of that tackiness is set down so I can go through and apply powder colored to the cheeks and the face without it sticking and getting funny. But even this cream blush alone with the lip, with the eyes, this is good. If you're gonna have like an everyday, you've gotta go to the office, you wanna do a quick run out, just simple everyday makeup, you could throw on an easy lip stain and call it a day. I wanna demonstrate that now, so I'm gonna use the Etude Dear Darling Water Tint in the shade Sweet Potato Red. All right, there you go. So with the lip stain, now we have harmony between all three colors. And what I'm gonna do is for the thumbnail, I'm gonna go ahead and darken my hair color just a little bit in post-editing. That way everything feels a little bit more harmonious. So when you're scrolling through the algorithm, it's gonna be like, oh, okay, that makes more sense because I'm like ashy brown and blonde and I'm not giving off a convincing deep dark winter, but I just want you all to get the overall feeling. Here it is with this, but let's add it up a little bit more. Maybe you have trouble with your makeup lasting, so let's create some longevity. I'm gonna go back to my little Sydney Grace palette and I'm gonna use the highlighter called Heaven. I'm gonna use my e.l.f. complexion brush that I used to powder my face, and I'm gonna use the highlight shade just on top of my cheekbones. This is gonna be right where we applied our liquid highlighter. And if you're unsure of where to apply it, find a light source. So for me, my light is right in front of me. I'm gonna look straight ahead. I'm gonna turn my face side to side. Once you find where the light hits, so for me, the light's hitting my cheek right here. So I can see right here, but if you tilt your face forward and down, I can see that highlight tends to go from here to here. So right here and through here. So I can take my highlight and follow that area so that way when the light hits it, it just kind of shows off the whole cheek. Makes it look a little bit more sculpted and pretty. Let's put some blusher on. Blush I saw in store today that I thought would be perfect for our deep dark winters. And fun fact, a lot of times if you are a softer muted summer, you can borrow from deep dark winter, as the two palettes are sister palettes. They can pull inspiration from. So if you're wearing a very heavy eye and you want a little bit more of a soft nude muted lip that isn't going to compete for attention, look for a soft summer lip. Vice versa, if soft summer wants something a little bit more vampy, a little bit more va-va-voom, then borrow from the deep winter palette. You can really have a lot of fun with what you do with the sister palette and the coloring. That's something that a lot of people that do seasonal color analysis don't talk about, is borrowing elements from either the sister palette or the neighbor palettes. This blush I feel like would also work really well for a deeper skin tone soft summer. I'm going to use it today to tie in our look. This is the Essence Pure Nude Baked Blush in the shade 03 Golden Cassis. I'm going to continue with my e.l.f. complexion brush. Now I've not used this blush before, so I'm going to start with less product and just build up slowly. Very subtle. If we look here to here, it's very subtle. Using a fluffy powder brush, and I'm going to bounce or pounce my blush into the skin. And when I have less powder on my brush, I'm going to overlap anywhere that I applied that cream blush. Remember, I like to keep the focus of my color on the front of my cheek and then blend out. That is so pretty. That makes me very, very happy. Now, let's add a little bit more color to the lips. I'm gonna use a deep dark winter and soft summer staple. This is the Clinique Almost lipstick in the shade Black Honey. So here is Clinique's Almost lipstick in Black Honey on, and yes, I did apply it over top of the lip stain. And we're gonna go with this a little bit further. So for most deep dark winters, you've got a mid-tone wash of color on the cheek. You've got a nice neutral lip tone on that is not neutral or nude for the entire populace of people wearing makeup, but for your specific coloring, which is slightly higher in contrast with neutral, cool undertones. This is going to feel a lot more of a nude or neutral lipstick on your skin tone. For me, this is feeling a little bit more like a statement lip. So what I want to do is I'm going to show you a trick. If you're someone who, like we referenced earlier, maybe you're trying out a new color palette because you don't love the one that is best suited for you, you can make it work and play with it a little bit. My NYX Line Loud Lip Pencil in the shade Magic Maker. Now I've got my everyday deep dark winter lipstick on, but maybe this feels too intense. Maybe I'm new to wearing makeup, or I'm experimenting with this color palette because I feel like it's best suited, but it feels overwhelming. What I mentioned earlier about borrowing from your sister palette, Soft Summer, which is more muted. What we want to do, don't remove your lip, keep it on. It's gonna serve as an anchor and make what we're gonna do look really, really beautiful. I'm gonna take a tissue and blot it. We're not removing the lipstick, we're just taking off the sticky layer or the emollients from the top of the product. I'm gonna take my powder brush with a little bit of that Melania powder. Okay, we've neutralized it. You'll notice the tone is already changing, but we're gonna borrow from our soft or muted summer sisters, and we are gonna grab a muted nude lipstick. This is from MAC, and this is in the shade Blankety. So here is going to be the lip a little bit more muted. For me personally, this feels a little too muted for me. I feel like we look a little blah. So I'm gonna take a pinch more of that lip liner. And there's no need for precision with this step. We're just going to add a little bit to the perimeter. And then when you rub it together, it's going to help feather and blend. Now, for me personally, I feel like if you mute down the lip, then the cheek feels a little too nude. So I'm gonna take a little bit more of my blush, focus it here on the front of the cheek. And we can't forget about mascara. So I'm gonna finish off with my lashes. I'm gonna be using the L'Oreal Lash Paradise Primer on both sides, and I'm gonna use the L'Oreal Lash Paradise in the shade Black Brown. For mascara, for deep dark winter, you can either choose a black brown or black. Those are what it's going to be technically the best colors for you. But if you're someone who you're happy with black, the darkest black you can find, then go for whatever makes you happy. But technical resources suggest that you should be using a black brown or a black mascara. Alrighty, so here is our final deep, dark winter makeup tutorial. This is going to be a lot more subtle and subdued than the previous video I did for this color season. That's what this second round is all about. It's about doing the opposite to demonstrate the different types of looks, and also share things about your sister palettes, your neighboring palettes, how you can play with some more colors and expand on your color palette so you don't feel narrowed into this little box, or how to tweak things. Do keep in mind that I am not a deep dark winter, so this doesn't look a little bit more bold on me than it would on someone who truly fits into this color palette. I hope you were able to find this helpful. and enjoyable. If you did, please make sure you give it a thumbs up and check out the description box down below for the products and tools used in this video, so that way you can do your seasonal color appropriate shopping a little bit more conveniently. I would love to hear from you in the comment section if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the next round of videos. But until the next video, I will see you all later. Bye, y'all.